I don't know where else to post this, because they shut me down on any other platform that I could think of, so I guess I'm posting here instead. I was in Iraq in 2006, doing interrogations in support of the 5th Special Forces Group. We were located in the southwestern corner of Victory Base Complex. This was the area that they called the Redwania Palace Complex, because of the absurd number of palaces and other fancy resort-style living arrangements used by Saddam and the Iraqi ruling elite. Our job was to question high-value individuals. This meant we had priority for anyone that we thought was more important, influential, or knowledgeable than the average bomb thrower. The idea was that we would do some intensive, long-term interrogation, but the reality was pretty disappointing. Everything was pretty mundane and even boring, and by this time, everyone had accepted that there were no stockpiles of WMDs. At the same time, the Iraqis were starting to turn on each other. This was after the Golden Mosque bombing, which basically kicked off the Iraqi civil war. But that is not what this post is really about. We were looking for a place where we could have an isolated facility for our high-value detainees, where they would not be able to interact with each other or the general population that you'd find in one of the larger detention centers. This was back when Cropper and Abu J were still in business. We found a couple of small buildings that looked decent, with high walls and enough space for maybe 20 closet-sized cells. One of the places we looked at was this brick building in the middle of the forest. I'm using the term forest loosely, as nothing in Iraq qualifies as a forest, the same way that you'd think of Washington State or Yellowstone or something. This was just a bunch of trees, kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Every night you could see big swarms of bats coming out of the trees from the south. They would fly over the big lake, in front of the palaces, and eat the insects. The water was pretty stagnant. Anyway, this forest had a small grey building in the middle of it. It was a round building that was covered in dark marble on the outside, but made of reinforced concrete on the inside. It had a heavy metal gate hidden behind a thick wooden door. At the time, we had no idea what the purpose of the building was. Some kind of storage facility for Saddam's palaces, maybe. There were no windows, plumbing, or furniture. We didn't think that it was some kind of residence, because it looked more like a prison. The EOD guys had already inspected it and found nothing wrong at all. We had no idea what the building was supposed to be. We also didn't really care. So, we said screw it, and brought in a bunch of plywood and started setting things up. What we ended up with was a large circular room that the guards could hang out in, and a second room where we would keep the detainees. Each detainees had their own plywood cell with a foam mattress, a blanket, and a Quran. The place did not have any plumbing, so the guards would escort the detainees outside to use a porta potty that they had set up. The MI team had a separate wooden shack where we could run our classified computers and write our reports. It took us like 2 weeks to get everything set up, and then the SF guys started bringing detainees in. Like I said, this was really boring work. This was a really shitty time to be in Iraq because the violence was exploding, and nobody really even knew what was actually going on. Our soldiers were not trained as investigators, so they tended to just grab anyone they thought looked suspicious and bring them in for questioning. Like, if a bomb went off, they would just snatch up everyone on the street and then bring them in to us. Their philosophy was that they were too busy to care who was actually guilty, and that the MI guys would sort it all out in the end. We also had an Iraqi SOF team who was supposed to be really, really good. Looking back on it, that would target old regime Sunni Baathists that they really wanted gone. Everything in Iraq was a gang or a mafia or whatever. We did not really care, because they were on our side for the moment, and that was good enough for us at the time. So, we had been running this place for basically a week when the Iraqi SOF brings in a detainee. I don't remember his name, and it is not important. They accused him of being some high-level Baathist in Saddam's government, and he had been a fugitive since the original invasion. At this point, we were all pretty jaded. Saying someone was part of the Ba'ath regime really did not mean anything anymore. You could throw a rock in Baghdad and it will probably hit a former regime Ba'athist. I'm just going to call him Haj. They bring in Haj, blindfolded, which was the SOP for transporting detainees. The guards let him in, still blindfolded, to the rooms where they took his photo and fingerprints and all that. Then they brought him into the interrogation booth. I call it a booth because that is the generic term army interrogators use for any interrogation space. We just say, I'm going in the booth or whatever. This particular room was a small space with marble floors and tiles on the walls. Basically everything in these fancy palaces was covered with mosaic tile patterns on the walls. Anyway, they bring Haj into the booth with Sergeant Smith. I am not going to be using his real name for obvious reasons, but it will suffice to know that he was an E6 who transferred in from the infantry. He didn't really know what he was doing. Nobody at the time really knew what they were doing, but he was worse than most. He had been paid an obscene amount of money to reclass into 35M because they were trying to expand the MOS and we were short on NCOs. SSG Smith was great at running teams, training weapons, keeping accountability, and all the stuff that you would expect an infantry NCO to be good at. But he was freaking useless when it came to anything MI related, so we used him as an administrator and a screener. SSG Smith's job was to ask the detainee some basic questions like their name, their religion, their birthplace, and so on and so forth. This was all basic background stuff that anyone should have been able to answer without provoking any resistance. Then, once we had the basic information down, we would assign the detainee to an interrogator, and they would start formulating their strategy. This was basically the extent of the work that we could trust SSG Smith to do, as far as actual interrogations. Anyway, Haj comes in, and they take off the blindfold. He takes one look around the room, and sees the tile patterns on the walls, and the guy starts screaming. I mean screaming. I've never heard anything like it. He is absolutely freaking out. SSG Smith does not know what to do. He hasn't even asked him a question yet, but the guy keeps screaming and kicking and thrashing about to the point where we think he's going to hurt himself. Eventually, we have to just cancel the interrogation, terminate, and the guards basically drag him out of the room. Of course, this is the start of a total shit show. I should mention that this was post-Abu Ghraib, so everyone involved was very anxious about abuse allegations. When they hear about this detainee screaming at the top of his lungs, everyone from the guard commander to the VBC commanding general wants to know what just happened. SSG Smith, the guards, and the observers all have to give sworn statements to say that they never saw any misconduct at all. SSG Smith did not even touch the guy, did not even speak to him. Like I said, he just looked at the walls and lost his damn mind. Eventually, Haj calms down and we try to re-engage the next day. We had to drive him to Cropper because he was going insane being in that building. The interrogators at Cropper let SSG Smith go in again, and this time, the guy is finally willing to talk. He claims he was a senior police officer in the Saddam regime, and he knew that building was something called the Hole. He had been inside it before, and he knew that anyone who ever went into the hole never came back out again. When he saw what room he was in, he assumed we were about to murder him. So we go back, and we ask the guards if they've seen anything weird at all. We are starting to think that this was some kind of execution chamber, so it is possible that there is still some evidence of human rights abuses or murders that we could use against Saddam. This was still 2006, by the way, so Saddam's trial was still in progress. He was not executed until December of that year. Some of the guards in the run office tell us that the tiles in the floor are all loose. Okay, great. Now we have to call in CID to look for human remains or something. But SSG Smith does not want to wait. He thinks he's all cool and suave, and he wants to do everything himself, so he just starts pulling up the tiles, and we find that there is a false floor with a few layers of plywood covering up a weird hole. And this was pretty new. Like, definitely installed within the last few years. We are thinking, at this point, that somebody tried to cover up a mass grave or something during the invasion, and they hoped that the Americans would never ever find it. The hole itself is basically round and 2 meters wide, and it goes down a long, long way. Literally, the first thing SSG Smith does is break a chem light and drop it all the way down the hole. It falls down so far that we can't even see the light anymore. There is no splash, no echo, no anything. It just drops and drops until the light vanishes completely. So we toss a few more bricks and stuff in there, and there is no sound at all. SSG Smith is determined to figure this out. This was before smartphones had high quality cameras, and we did not have any cameras on hand that we could lower on a rope or anything like that. But SSG Smith went to Pathfinder school, and he was really proud of it. He knows how to rappel down, and he is a certified expert at moving equipment on ropes, so he grabs a decently long rope from the Humvee, ties a Swiss seat, and then clips himself on. I cannot overemphasize how stupid this idea is, but nobody stops him at all. So, SSG Smith starts to rappel down. At first, everything is going great. He talks to us and tells us how cold it is in the hole, but he cannot see or smell anything at all. The rope is at least 100 feet long, tied to the Humvee's trailer hitch outside, so we cannot imagine that he would abruptly run out of rope. We've got a private sitting in the Humvee in case we need to pull him out quickly. SSG Smith keeps going down, and he shouts up to tell us he is breaking another chem light. So we wait about 3 seconds, and then he starts screaming. He did not even have time to tell us what he was scared of. SSG Smith just screams, "Shit, shit, shit," and then he starts screaming in pain. It is even worse than Haj's screaming from before. I have no idea what was happening down there. I imagine that is how someone would scream if they were being eaten alive. Now the guards are shouting at the private to get him out of there. He starts letting the Humvee roll forward, and the rope starts coming back up. The guard sergeant is standing over the edge of the pit, looking down into the hole, while the rope comes up. I should mention at this point that SSG Smith did not have a weapon with him. None of the interrogators did. The guards had nightsticks, but the only weapon allowed in the facility was an M9 that guard sergeant carried. The other weapons were locked up, so everyone is shouting, and SSG Smith is screaming down in the hole, and the rope is coming back up, but not fast enough. Then the guard sergeant pulls out his weapon and fires 3 shots down the hole. Everything stops. Most people underestimate how loud a gunshot actually is, especially in a small concrete room like that. We can't hear anything, just the squealing sound of early onset tinnitus. But SSG Smith is not screaming anymore, I am sure of that. The rope keeps coming back up, but SSG Smith never comes back up with it. Eventually, the rope comes back up, and it's covered in blood and black slime. The guards ordered everyone out. I never saw what happened next. To this day, I have no idea what happened. There was a 15-6, then CID got involved, and we all wrote a bunch of sworn statements. They transferred all of the interrogators to Cropper, and we were never allowed to speak to the guards ever again. We were not from the same unit, so I did not have much reason to ever interact with them. All I know is what I heard from some buddies in 5th Group. The army brought in demolitionists and did a controlled detonation that leveled the entire building. They paved over it with a slab of concrete and set up a fence around the site. There were signs telling people not to enter the forest because the bats carried rabies. I never found out what happened to SSG Smith. I never saw a copy of the 15-6 or any official determination on the cause of death. I looked up his obituary later and saw that it was attributed to a mortar attack. The kind of random thing that could strike anybody for no reason at all. I also heard that the guard sergeant took his own life later on. I wish I had more answers, I wish I could make this a better story. I just don't know for sure what happened after we left. If anyone else was there, please let me know. The only thing I know for sure, and I put this on all of my sworn statements, is that SSG Smith was not the only person I could hear screaming down in that hole. Shithole spooks? Shithole spooks. Intro, be me. Wage cook, Jakarta, Indonesia. Shithole. Lots of spooks around. Lots of ancient spooks around. Here's my first story. Be me, 2018, wage cook. Took 2 days off from work. Bought a train ticket for a 7-hour ride. Train departs at night, so a whole journey is darkness outside of the train. Heard from train drivers that at night, some spooks are seen around the train tracks. Expecting to see some local spooks/ghosts. Train departs, no happenings. Board at train, open laptop, shit posting. A few hours later, heard a distinct female scream from the next train coach. Thinking that someone just got broken-hearted, train conductor and railway police on duty, suddenly running towards the scream. Intrigued, railway police present means something is happening. Probably passengers fighting each other. At this time, the loud female scream gets even louder, with train conductor and railway police shouting. That's it, I must see what is happening. Running to the next train coach, saw train conductor and railway police pinning down a female passenger. The female passenger is screaming and resisting the pinning down. At the same time, making gestures like ancient local traditional dancing. I asked fellow intrigued passenger nearby. She is possessed by a female ghost, maybe from the old train tunnel we just passed nearby. What? This random passenger I talked to seems to already know everything that is happening. My face when, the same random passenger assisting the train conductor during exorcism. My face when, the train indeed passes a 100-year-old tunnel. My face when, heard stories about blood sacrifices during the tunnel constructions that involves dancers. My face when, during the whole ordeal. Be me, be 2018. Wage cook sucks ass. Decides to hang around more often in train stations. I like trains. Involved in some railway passenger community services. Usually hangs out in the central transit station in Jakarta. Eventually get to know personally with the station master. One night, he invited me to have some coffee and cigarettes in his room during a sleepy midnight shift. There is a security camera monitor set up in his working station. Decides to peek around the CCTV cameras. There is a camera overlooking and monitoring the station's underground tunnel beneath platforms for passengers to use. Nobody there. Empty. It's midnight already, so it is normal. In the meantime, I decide to light a cigarette, looking away from the CCTV monitor for a while. When I am looking at the monitor again, I saw a woman in a white dress standing still in the underground tunnel. Maybe she's just a weirdo. Pretty normal to see weirdos at midnight trains. Tried to focus on her. Suddenly, she is floating towards the tunnel's wall. Floating, because no foot movements at all. She is literally floating and moving. She disappears into the tunnel's wall, as if the tunnel swallows her whole. All in front of my eyes on CCTV monitor. My face when, there were no doors at all at the tunnel, except a janitor storage room or some shit. My face when, pic related. Shithole spooks again. This one is not me, but a friend of mine who works as a train driver. Be me. Be a new train driver. Just recently finished the training. Stationed in the Bandung area. Bandung area was notorious for spook sightings at night. Train drivers on night shifts always saw ghosts and spooks when in Bandung area. First train driver assignment. Night local train schedule. Departs Bandung train station. Passing dark valleys and forests. No lights at all. Only locomotive fog lights. Suddenly saw a woman in red dress floating above in front of the locomotive. When focused on the woman, suddenly saw a silhouette of a man on the train tracks. Wants to hit the emergency brake, but at the last moment saw that the man is covered in blood and gore, hanging from the torso. It is a ghost, but holy fuck, it's a ghost maybe. But at the exact moment the locomotive hit the deformed man, He clearly heard a thud. Still thinks it's a ghost. Decides not to pull the emergency brake. Plays it cool. Nothing happened. Train driver assistant suddenly asks him, "You saw and heard that too, right?" Shitting bricks at this point. Train driver assistant, already familiar with these kinds of spooks. "Your first assignment in this area, right? Don't worry. That was normal for a night train ride." The train driver assistant just said that it is fucking normal to see a woman floating in midair at night in the middle of a dark forest. A few hours later, arrived at the terminus station. Sweating profusely, station staff ask what is happening. Tell the whole story. They laughed. They say that it is normal. Fell sick for 3 days afterwards. Received permits for a week from local train company rep. Local rep says it's normal for new guy train drivers to fall ill for a week after they see spooks for the first time. My face went. Train company already know that spooks are part of their job. Pick related is my face went. Shithole spooks again. There are urban legends in Indonesia, especially places with train tracks, that there are level crossing demons that inhabited all level crossings and preying on unsuspecting humans by making them deaf so that they never heard the speeding train coming along towards them. We call them Setan Budak in our local language. I personally think I saw an occurrence of level crossing demon preying on a human. Be me. Be wage cook. Be 2019. It's been years since I've commuted using commuter trains, and I already know all the routes and shit. Near my train station, there was a small illegal level crossings used by locals to cross the train tracks. Now dismantled as my train station has undergone renovations. The train tracks are usually walled off to prevent bystanders wandering onto the train tracks, but some locals always bore a hole big enough for them to cross. Be a normal morning, around 7 AM or so. Me waiting for my commuter train, along with hundreds of other passengers on the station platform. You can see the illegal crossing from the station platform. Station announces that an intercity train will soon pass by. Bell chimes blaring. From the hole in the wall near Slum's area, a random guy appears. Seems like a construction worker on morning break, crossing the train tracks using the illegal level crossing, unaware of the speeding intercity train. Not even slowed down a bit when the station chimes are blaring, and not even notices other passengers already screaming at him to watch the speeding train. Then the intercity train hits him like a force no one was ever seen before. He literally got smacked that hard that part of his body just explodes and bounces like a ragdoll for approximately 50 meters. Other passengers that see the whole ordeal are horrified. Some are crying. Me, myself, I just stood there in silence, unable to think anything at all. Soon, there are railway police and station security shed covering the mold corpse with newspapers. Must be level crossing demons. More shithole spooks. Be me. Be Indonesian. Be 2019. Legislative and presidential election season. Candidates are campaigning themselves, whoring to the general public. Presidential debates and campaign are stealing the spotlight. Almost none talk about legislative election shit. Be walking home at 11 PM after disembark at commuter train station. Suddenly see a stroke of light in the sky, kind of like a meteor, but dimmer. Maybe it's a meteor. Heard a loud thud. Looks like the meteor hit one of the houses on the rooftop. Minding my own business, lit cigarette, keep walking. When walking near the house that I heard the thud earlier, I heard shrieking and screaming coming from the house. For a moment, I saw a middle-aged man lying on the floor while convulsing, surrounded by his panicking relatives. Neighbor running to the scene. Some are spooked, but some are being silent about it. Heard some of the neighbors talk about that the man has been hexed by black magic sent by some shaman. Turns out that man is one of the candidates for legislative elections. One of his political opponents hired a shaman to put a curse on him. Shitting bricks at this point, but keep minding my own business, walking along the scene. Holy fuck, is this even real? .jpg. Never mind. Another shithole spooks. Be me. Be Indonesian. Be remote working for months already, due to Corona-chan. Fuck yes, I can work while I'm on vacation. Be 1 week ago. Book a train ticket to Yogyakarta for me and my GF. Took a vacation for a week while remote working. Fast forward. Already arrived in Yogyakarta and doing shit with my GF. Day 3 of vacation. My GF suggests that we should go to the sacred Parangkusumo beach. Fuck yes. My GF contacted her friend to accompany us to the beach. There were 4 of us. Me, my GF's friend, Anne, my GF friend's BF, Riz, my girlfriend's friend, Anne, had her left arm fractured. We are using Anne's car. 4 of us driving to the beach at noon. Arrived at the beach at afternoon, hours before sunset. This particular beach is very sacred for Javanese beliefs due to it being the area of the sacred sea queen. Me, my GF, and Riz, Anne's boyfriend, sitting around the beach and smoking and shit. Anne suddenly has the urge to walk to the beachhead, toward the waves. Mind you, the waves on this beach are always rough, normally 3 to 4 meters, along with strong wind. When Anne is standing near the shores, the waves in her proximity are suddenly calming down, while the wind is still strong. Holy shit, are you guys seeing this? Look at the waves. I can't see shit, aside from the fact that the waves in Anne's proximity are almost non-existent, while at all the other parts, they look like mini tsunamis. My GF and Riz saw that too. The waves at Anne's proximity are almost non-existent. Me, do you think what I'm thinking? My GF, yes, but we better not talk about it here. You know the reason. Riz, I agree. After approximately 1 hour, we saw Anne meditating at the shores, protected by calm waves. She returned to us near the parking lot, with her goddamn left fractured hand already recovered. What the fuck? She can only smile and puts on a huge grin, just like someone who won the lottery. Riz, you met her, didn't you, the queen? She only nodded. My face went. I had an uncle, my dad's oldest brother. He was already old when I was a kid, and he died before I even finished middle school. I think he was kind of a fuck up, because he lived with us for a while. Dad mentioned once that he somehow lost his house. Anyway, my uncle used to help my parents put me to bed by reading me scary stories out of this huge book. He claimed that it was his journal, and that the stories were all true, kek. I still remember a few, and I may as well share them, because I love these friends, and I want to keep it bumped. Just imagine you are 9 years old like I was, and you're shitting your pants as your uncle reads these. Uncle worked up north for a few years on a ranch. Seasonal work, spring through summer, usually. Some years he'd work less, sometimes more, but he was always gone by fall. Every spring he would return and find that the rancher's house had lots of damage. The 2 of them would fix it up, and then my uncle would stick around and help him around the ranch. One spring he came back, and the rancher had a broken leg. Rancher said he fell off of the roof fixing it. He noticed that the house looks especially bad this year. It had a huge wraparound front porch, but it had been practically demolished. Rancher says a tree fell on it. No trees near the house, kek. Rancher is out of commission due to the broken leg, so uncle has to repair the porch by himself. Time passes, and the rancher heals. One morning, uncle is helping around the ranch, while rancher goes off hunting. Everything is fine until uncle spots the rancher heading out of the woods. He is walking backwards, with his shotgun raised, aimed at the trees. Uncle immediately thinks, oh fuck, must be a mountain lion. He runs to his truck, where his gun is, grabs the gun, and rushes towards the rancher. As he is rushing over, he notes something bizarre. Grass is tall in the area, and it seems to be bending like there is a wild breeze, only there isn't one. Realize that the grass is bending from the tree line towards the rancher, like someone is walking through it, only nobody is there. For some reason, this spooks my uncle so much that he yells out like a fucking barbarian. This startles the rancher, and he fires off a round. Immediately, the grass stands back up, like whatever was moving through it is gone. The rancher then runs back towards the house and tells my uncle to come inside. Uncle asks him what the hell that was, and rancher is shaking like a leaf, saying, "It was a mountain lion. It was a mountain lion." My uncle is thinking bullshit. The mountain lion would have to have been invisible. There was not an animal in sight. But the rancher looks mega spooked, so he drops it, and the two calm their nerves over some whiskey. Uncle passes the summer on the ranch. He's waiting for the rancher to offer some explanation about what he saw. Never does. Before Uncle leaves that summer, rancher gives him a bonus and tells him he earned it. Fast forward. Fall and winter pass. Next spring, Uncle returns to the ranch. He shows up, and there is a crew doing repairs on the house. Uncle is confused. He knocks on the door, and some young guy answers. Even more confused, Uncle explains that he works there every spring and summer, and mentions the rancher's name. The nephew tells him he is the rancher's nephew, and that the old man passed away, unfortunately. Uncle is sad. What happened? Nephew shakes his head. We don't know, but it looks like a mountain lion might have got him. Uncle's blood runs cold. He recalls the weird event from the previous summer. And the house, he asks. The nephew shakes his head again. We don't know. That's it. The way my uncle said that last line always gave me shivers, lol.